Gracias por salvarme. Gracias por tu compasión. Gracias por tu luz. Gracias por tu vida. Como tú no hay otro. Como tú no hay otro Dios. Eres mi esperanza. es la eternidad. Llamaste el mundo a existencia, me acerco a ti. Moriste por mis fracasos, llevaste mi culpa en la cruz, cargaste en tus hombros mi carga, me acerco a ti. ¿Qué puedo hacer? ¿Qué puedo decir? Te ofrezco mi corazón completamente a ti. En tu salvación camino, tu espíritu vive en mí. Declararé tus puedo decir, te ofrezco mi corazón completamente a ti. Desde el principio diseñaste un plan, me rescataste antes de yo pedirlo. Encontré tu amor, me diste dirección, mi vida tienes en tus manos, Dios. Señor, tu amor no tiene fin, tu amor no tiene fin. Conmigo estás, nada nunca podrá apartarme de ti. Conmigo estás. Me respondes antes de orar y nos abres más de lo que imagino. ¿Quién me apartará de tu amor por mí? Mi esperanza siempre en ti pondré. Mi Dios, tu amor no tiene fin, tu amor no tiene fin. Conmigo estás.
All right, guys. If you guys want to find a seat, we'll go ahead and get started. No matter if you're here for the workshop that's in here or out there, you're all in here right now. We're going to go ahead and start with worship, and then we will break off into the different workshops. But first, I just want to say thank you so much for coming. I know this week has not been ideal, but super glad that you guys all decided to come out in the snow and ice and just get to hear what the Lord's doing around the world, but also in Memphis as he brings internationals right around us. So I'll go ahead and pray, and then we'll go ahead and sing. God, thank you for tonight. Thank you for just the opportunity to be able to sit and listen and hear about ways that we can be involved in your mission, but also just get to hear what healthcare is doing around the world and the doors that it's opening, and even how to interact and how to even care for internationals that are coming to our city. God, be with this time. I pray that it will be a time of encouragement, but also a time of challenge as we just learn and grow together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, David. Hey, as we continue tonight, I'd invite you all stand with me. We're going to sing this song called Build My Life. Just encourage you to take just a few minutes to set your eyes, set your heart, set your mind on the Lord. As we explore what he might have for us tonight, let's just lift him up. Let's make his name great. Sing with me.
Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you.
Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever say He's worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Oh, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in a wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever say He's worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you. Oh, we live for you. Sing holy. Oh, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. And I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone. And I will build my life, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone. And I will not be shaken. Oh, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those who sing holy. Oh, holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in. Would you show up? Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Amen. Amen. You can have a seat.
Well, this week is what we call Go Week. It's our annual missions conference. And as I said on Sunday, we want this to be more than just a conference. We want this to kickstart the vision of global missions throughout the year. But also, we want this to be a time where each of you connect and understand how can you take your next step in global missions, whether that's going short-term, long-term, mid-term, or even supporting or praying for those who have gone. And so I'm super excited for tonight. When I took the role of global coordinator, it was one of those things that they told me about, Go Week. And I was like, well, it sounds great, had no idea what to expect. And really Sunday I was blown away by just, I really felt like it was special in the room, but also like thinking about this week and thinking about the different things that were going to take place And then all of a sudden, snow happened and ice happened, and I was like, so this is Go Week. That's wonderful, but we're not getting to do like all the things that we have planned. But I truly believe that the Lord is still in control of this time. And even though we don't have the opportunity to hear from Dr. Tom and Dr. Janet twice, I'm just excited that they were still able to come. They flew in even with ice and snow all around, and super excited. So their workshop will be in here. It's called Healthcare and Missions, Your Path to Global Impact. And Dr. Tom and Janet Hicks, they work with the IMB, and Dr. Tom is the director of IMB Health Strategies. They have a lot of experience. They've spent 27 years overseas, and they just want to be able to pour in and just talk a little bit about their experience, but ways that each of you can get involved in that. And then out in the lobby, we'll be with Carter Brinkley, the church partnership manager from World Relief. In that workshop, we'll be welcoming the world, embracing global neighbors. And we'll be talking about what does the Bible say about internationals, immigrants, refugees, and what is our part to play in that. And so those are the two different workshops that are going to happen. I'm going to pray for us, and then we'll split off into our workshops. And we're super excited for these speakers to be here. We just want to take a minute and just thank them for coming. Some from far and others from right around us in our own neighborhoods. And so let me pray, and then we'll break off and start these workshops. So, God, thank you for this time. Thank you for who you are. I pray that each of us would just learn something new in you tonight. I pray as we even consider and look at our different opportunities of global missions and how to be involved, whether it's in our own neighborhood or whether it's going overseas, God, I pray that you would just make it clear and that you would just allow us to understand what is our next step to take. Thank you for these speakers just coming and pouring in to each of us here. I pray that you would just be with them as they speak, and that this will just be a time that glorifies you. In Jesus' name, amen. You have about 2 minutes, so anybody going to Welcoming the World, Embracing Global Neighbors, we'll go out in the lobby, and then anybody for Healthcare and Missions will stay in here. 2 minutes, and we'll start.
Okay, the doors are closed, so you can't get out. So let's go on and get started. So first, I want to start off by asking, how many of you were here last year? Okay, to you, I should go on and extend an apology because I had just gotten back from the field. I have no idea what stories I told you last year. So there's a very good chance. I hope you like reruns because that may be what you're hearing a little bit of tonight. When Barrett and David contacted me to see if I could come to Go Week this year, the first thing I said is, well, can Janet come too? Because that'll overall improve the total quality of the presentation. And not to mention, she's just better looking than me. And they graciously agreed, as long as we agreed to stay in the same hotel room. And I said, that really is generally not a problem. So I know at least part of what we talk about tonight you didn't hear last year because she wasn't here. So, one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit about is our call. I wanted to process with you a little bit our call, and then if you were here last year, I'm going to make you do at least half the work. So, but we just wanted to walk you through that process, what it looked like for us. When I was in high school, I pretty much had my life figured out. I knew what I was going to do, where I was going to go, how I was going to do it. I was going to go to college, graduate school, get my PhD in molecular biology, cure cancer, take a nice trip to Sweden, get a nice prize, and retire. But apparently I was a bit of a troublemaker because the association, the group of churches there where I lived, was taking a mission trip to Central America. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. Doesn't really fit my plan, but that's interesting. But the ladies of the church said, if you'll go, we'll pay to have you go. I guess they were ready to get rid of me. So I took them up on their offer, and I went on the trip to Central America. In Central America, we had the opportunity we were doing construction work. They looked at me and they said, you look about the only thing we can get out of you is to stir this concrete, so here's concrete, start stirring. And I spent a week stirring concrete, and the people that knew what they were doing used it to build a house for a teacher. While we were there, we had the chance to see and to talk about the healthcare system and what healthcare was like there in the villages and even in the city. And it turns out in that particular area, as Belize, Central America, in that area that you went to the hospital to die. You didn't really go to the hospital to get better. And that was kind of a holding place where you would go when you had no other hope, and you would just stay there until you died. That disturbed me. I didn't think that was the way things should be. But I had a plan. So we came back from that trip. And over the course of the next year, that kept coming to my mind that the hospital is a place to go to die. That's not the way it should be. I struggled with that, and I was a believer. I was a follower of Christ. I had been for several years. I had been discipled. But I had my plan. And I felt like the Lord was calling me to do something about that. This whole issue of the poor health care outside the United States, poor health care in the developing world. And what could I do to make a difference there? But I just thought, if I go as a missionary, I got to be a preacher. And I really, really don't want to be a preacher. And so I pushed back. Against that call for a long time. Fortunately, my church had a great youth pastor, and he helped me to understand that God made you the way he made you so that he can use you the way he wants to use you. And so over the course of several months and working through that sense of calling, I realized that my plan was on the throne. And I needed to get my plan off the throne and put Christ on the throne. If I trusted him, then I could. He was worthy. I could trust him. But that also means that he gets to choose those big decisions for me, and I need to follow that. So when I came to that realization, I said, okay, I can do missions. I can do missions, and I will do the things that God made me to do. I'm pretty good at going to school, so I'll just go to school for a really long time, and get all the degrees that you need and stuff like that. And then I can go over and be of use to him in the kingdom.
It was about my junior year in high school. I got an English assignment. Every week we had to write on a certain topic, and the topic of the week was, what will you be doing? What do you see yourself doing 10 years from now? It was probably one of the first times I really stopped to think about the future, to ask God what plans he had for me. As I worked through the paper and prayed, I felt like he was calling me to something like what my parents did. My parents had been in the inner city of Gary, Indiana. They met needs of people and shared the gospel with them. I started thinking about that further, and I thought, in these days, you have to have a sociology degree to do that. I did not see myself doing sociology in college. Between that thought and other things that God worked through me, one was a musical that summer. One of the songs said, "Gladly will I go, Lord, anywhere at all. Gladly will I go, Lord, anywhere you call. Use the gifts you've given me to share your wondrous love. Gladly will I go." With all of the pieces, people were saying, with your grades, you could probably go to medical school. And I said, no, I do not like the sight of blood. I'm the one that covers my eyes when we go by an accident. No way. Maybe pharmacy. Maybe God wants me to be in pharmacy. So I kind of headed toward pharmacy for a while. And then we talked with somebody from the IMB, and he said, we really need preachers. It's like, no problem, I can't do that. He said one of the hardest ones to fill is for doctors and nurses. He said pharmacists, kind of harder to get them in places, but we need doctors and nurses. And I realized, okay, God wants me in medicine, and he's just going to have to take care of the fact that I don't like the sight of blood. So I started along that route.
So I've discovered that as I talk to members of the congregation, and as Barrett tells me about the congregation, that a lot of you are here, at least in part, because this is where the Lord put you. You're here because you can have an effective ministry right here in Memphis. And you might be thinking about beyond Memphis. You might be thinking about how God is intending to use you, what he's built you to do. When I wanted to get you to spend some time in your table, I think everybody, we got one person at a table back there. We need to find her someplace else to put her. But I'd like you to process together, how has God laid his call on your life right now? Okay, now when I read the Great Commission, it talks about Jerusalem, Judea, and the ends of the earth, right? Okay, we got the ends of the earth covered. When you're ready to go to the ends of the earth, let us know, and we'll help you find a way to do that. But how has God laid on your heart to minister to your Jerusalem, to your Judea? And how is he calling you to the nations? So I'd like you to just talk about that on your table. I'll give you a few minutes to discuss it, and then we'll come back together and you can tell us about it. All right? Take a couple more minutes and then we're going to come back together. All right. So hopefully those that are streaming are not too bored by the fact that we're sitting around here at these tables talking, and you've had a chance to think through some of the issues of how the Lord is calling you right now. I realize you may not be at a table with us here. Is that the camera? Is that the camera I should be looking at? Either one. Oh, cool. Okay. Well, hopefully, wherever you are, you've had a chance to kind of process through some of this stuff, and you'll be able to process either with somebody in your family or come when you're at the church next time and share some of that. I would love to hear from some of you. How is the Lord dealing with you right now? How is He calling you? How is He laying a heart for the lost on you right now? You realize that if you don't volunteer, I'm just going to voluntold you. So, oh, there we go.
All right. I think that the Lord has called me. He's helped me to be more comfortable around people that don't share the same faith as I do, especially in school. Sometimes you're going to be put in circumstances that you're not surrounded by believers, and I think that there's so much beauty in being surrounded by people that don't share the same faith or the same principles necessarily, but to be able to understand and maybe share why and where you're coming from. So he's really made me a lot more comfortable around people like that. And also, hopefully, I think he's used me a lot to like just share my beliefs through my actions, so that other people can see it kind of in the periphery, so that they can understand what I stand for.
Excellent. Yeah, it doesn't take long. When you're in school, and depending on how you get a job, those quickly become the only people you know that aren't believers, right? Because the rest of your life is centered around believers in the church. And then it's like, how do I have an impact on the lost if I don't know any lost? So what an opportunity while you're still in school, or if you're working in a secular hospital, the opportunity to be able to reach the lost. So, okay, somebody else. You guys are you're like Chinese medical students, all staring at your feet. All right. Yeah, here we go.
All right. I have been going for missions for some years now. But now that I'm retired, I've really always wanted to do something more local because, as someone pointed out last year, the nations are coming to us now. So I was talking to Whitney on Sunday about doing some things more with the refugees here in Memphis, and I'm really excited about that because you don't always have to buy a plane ticket in order to minister to people who are in need.
Yeah, as you look around the cities in the U.S., the nations are here. They're not coming; they're already here, and that means that you don't need a visa, you don't need a plane ticket, and you don't even have to go through jet lag. Though, if you're doing call every third night, you're kind of going through jet lag all the time. I'm coming over here because you guys nobody over here said anything.
So, we're all here for school, and I knew that coming from Mississippi, where in dental school everyone in my class was from Mississippi, if I was going to do residency, that we would be surrounded with more people who didn't look like us and didn't come from cultures like us. So even in Memphis, in our residency, whether that's a co-resident or a faculty member or a patient, we are surrounded by so many more people who are from all walks of life, and ultimately a lot of people who don't know the Lord. And it's cool. One of the coolest things that's happened since we've been here in Memphis is Grace has started helping take care of one of my faculty members' kids, and that family does not know the Lord. And so that's just kind of been a really cool thing. We've come to really care for and love that family, and been praying for them. And so just been really cool to see how the Lord has allowed us to kind of just become familiarized with people who we probably would have maybe never encountered or been familiar with, like their culture or anything like that, and become familiarized with them, and therefore I think love them more easily. So that's been a cool thing that's happened here in Memphis.
Yeah, and just like Sharice was saying, we have cross-cultural opportunities, Mississippi to Tennessee, but others as well, as the nations are coming in, as we get opportunities to understand other people and to see the world through their eyes, so that we can get an opportunity to share the gospel with them. And those of you that are in healthcare, we can cross every cultural barrier. We can get across every socioeconomic barrier. We can get across all kinds of governmental barriers because of what we do. And so we have this great opportunity to share the gospel as we get past those barriers. And as long as we're cognizant of the barrier and we're cognizant of the privilege that we have of getting through that, and treat those opportunities as the gold that they are, the gift that the Lord has given you. I think you heard earlier, I hope you heard, that we both have kind of a similar background in that we were very resistant to going into medicine. But then we're both very blessed to have been called early. We were called into missions in high school. What that means is that when I went to college, and then I went to graduate school, and then I went to medical school, I knew all along the way where I was going, what I was doing, because it was a very clear call. And I don't know how many of you have classmates or were and studied and had classmates that were very driven. Right? They're very driven to succeed. They're very driven to do well because I gotta get my, I've got to get excellent MCAT. I've got to get what?
BMW.
I've got to get my BMW, but that's after residency, and then I've got to get my BMW, so they're very driven to achieve. Right? Well, there's a big difference between being called and being driven. Right? because I'm sitting there with these guys and they're suffering. We're all suffering, right? I mean, head and neck anatomy, it's terrible. So we're all suffering, but I have a call. I know that this is going to work out for my benefit and for the benefit of the kingdom, and they don't know that it's going to work out for the benefit of BMW. So there's a real difference in the attitude and the way that you're able to process what is happening to you during all that educational process. Now, one thing that happens when you're called early, like I was and like Janet was, one thing that happens is every relationship is affected by that. So I got to the point where I thought, I ain't never going to find a woman that's going to go with me. So Lord, if I need to be single, that's fine. And had to come to a peace with that because it just seemed like every time I would get into a relationship and we'd get to that point, it's like, wait, I thought you were going to medical school. Yes, I am. I don't know about that. So I just said, okay, that's fine. I stopped telling people about my call. I stopped sharing that. I stopped dating. I thought, this is it. That's fine. That's cool. I got to finished undergrad, did graduate school thing, started med school. First day of med school, you go to class and they tell you, look to the left, look to the right. In 4 years, one of you won't be there, right? Because we flunk out a third of you. So you go through all of that terrorizing that they do in the first day of medical school. And then I met the guy that runs the med student Bible study. And he says, we're doing Bible study at the house. Come on over, and there's food. Well, duh. I'm a med student, and I've been living on ramen for a while. So yeah, if there's food with actual protein, I'm there. Just give me the address. This is before GPS. I'll figure it out though. So go to this guy's house, and they're having the Bible study. We all eat, and then we go to sit down and open the Word together. And it's the first one of the year, and so we got to introduce ourselves. We got to get to know each other, right? So they said, turn to the person on your left and tell them, tell them your name, your rank, your serial number. You give them the identifying stuff, and then what would you do if you could do anything? If time and money are not an issue, what would you do if you could do anything? So I turned to my left, and fortunately she turned right. And I saw this woman that I would never talk to because she's way too pretty, right? And the guys won't admit this, but I'll just go on and tell you, pretty girls make us nervous, and so we don't like to talk to them. But in Bible study, you kind of have to because he just told me to. So I turned and I introduced myself.
So what he didn't note is my first 2 years of medical school, we met with a lady doctor at her house. And so it was about 6 or 7 girls, depending on who had time. It was just us. We did not get to hang out with the boys at their Bible study. It was across town. So this was it was the new year. You could meet the new freshmen coming in and try to help them out. And it was the first time we got to meet with the guys. So my answer, the one of interest, what would I want to do? I can't remember what I said, but it was either go to a Cubs baseball game with my friends or an Indians baseball with my friends. This was
85?
maybe 86.
Oh, yeah.
86 or 87.
86.
How long had it been since the Cubs had been in the series?
The Cubs, the Indians, they had, the Indians had never been in a series. The Cubs hadn't won a series since the 20s or something. Hadn't even gotten the pennant since the 20s, so I thought, she likes losers, I've got a shot. this is kind of in the back of my head, but she's too pretty, and so I'm pretty sure. And this all this baggage of, you don't tell people what you're going to do because it's just going to turn them off. So in the med student Bible study group, they had people come to visit. We were in Birmingham. They had people come to visit Birmingham from the field, like missionary physicians come and talk about what it's like to be a missionary physician. Imagine that. They do that sometimes.
And food was involved in that
there's,
meeting,
of course,
too.
food involved. Yep. So sign me up. So they were having one, and she was going to be at this guy's house. So I went over and.
So this was an OBGYN from Africa, and she started going around the room saying, okay, what do you want to do? What do you plan to do? What do you plan to do? And it was mostly short answer, took 15 seconds for most people. She got around to Tom, and it was the first time he admitted his direction, and I was intrigued.
Why were you intrigued?
Because he said, I plan to go into medical missions. It's like, oh, I need to find out more. This lady was very nice, and she grilled him for another 5-6 minutes. So I found out a lot more other than we'd been at all the Bible studies together.
So now she likes losers, and she found out I'm going into missions. But at that point, before that happened, what were you thinking in terms of your kind of long-term, marriage?
So I will note, back early college, I had looked, at that time, security was not an issue. IMB could post everybody on the field. I went through line by line, and there were no married doctors, married female doctors. Guys, yes. Single ladies, yes, but no married female doctors. And I thought, not looking good. I did find out there were a few later on. But, by this time, I was a third year student. The picking's getting small, almost zero. There's a good chance I'm going to go by myself.
Yeah,
and that's okay.
So I'm pretty sure you just said that you were at the bottom of the barrel when you were starting to look at guys, and this is probably true. Yep. I really appreciate that. As it turns out, back then the IMB, all women were church and home. They didn't list what they did, and so you couldn't tell that there were actually married female physicians on the field. Because they just said church and home. So she decided to become a church and home surgeon, which turns out to be pretty much, the amount of surgery we did in our house, that was kind of accurate. Ultimately, we started dating, and we got married, and I remember our trip to Dallas. It was time for us to be thinking about where we were going to go, what was our framework for thinking about that?
So, as we talked during the dating days, we wanted to look at the 1040 window. I mean, both of us were in medicine because we wanted to go where other people could not get in. Medicine was an entry to get in to countries. So we were looking 1040 window, and we picked out about 6 places, I think. Yeah, about 6 places. And I think at that point we kind of felt God leading us to one area. And then you wrote, the medical director, who had been at lots of meetings, saying, this is the time to step up and take advantage of an open window. And we said, are there any open windows? This is our background. Where could we go? He sent our letter out to about 5 people. one of them responded, and that's where we were.
That's where we ended up.
11 years.
Yeah. So through a number of just weird circumstances, God clearly narrowed down the entire field of the whole of the 1040 window to one specific job and was very clear in where he was leading us to go. And then we got stuck, either through stubbornness. I prefer the term persistence, but yeah, we stayed there for 25 years in the same spot, in the same country. Now, why do you go to the 1040 window? So for us, our big issue was obviously the biggest problem in the world is lostness, right? I mean, admittedly, pediatric nephrotic syndrome is a pretty big problem, but the biggest problem in the world is lostness. And so we looked at the world and said, this is the area between the 10th and the 40th parallel that we cannot openly go there with the gospel. But that's not okay. We can't just say, oh, okay, if we can't go there, we'll just let all those people die and go to hell. We can't do that. That's not okay. And so we were looking at how can we be a part of addressing lostness in these places that others can't go, that the preacher boys can't go or other types can't go. And why do we want to go? Well, the solution for lostness is being there, right? Is being there, connecting with people and sharing the gospel with them. There's lots of electronic means now to share the gospel. There's lots of other ways to get the gospel out through, even back in the old days when we had radio. There's lots of ways to get the gospel out, but nothing replaces that face-to-face, that physical presence, conversation, understanding culture and interpreting the gospel for that culture. So physical missionary presence is the key to addressing lostness. Now, so what does it look like? What do we do? How are we doing this? How do we go about addressing lostness? So I want to talk a little bit about what we call the core missionary task. And I see a few people grinning, so it may be that you've been to some of our trainings before, and I apologize because we pretty much hammer you over the head with this every chance we get. We talk the IMB. We talk about the core missionary task all the time. You'd think that we've made it up, but it turns out we didn't. God did, and what we did is we just tried to figure out what are the things that God does. What are the things that God leads cross-cultural workers to do to get to lostness and to plant churches and to expand the kingdom. First of all, there's entry. We again, if physical presence is the key to addressing lostness, we've got to get there. We've got to get physically there. We've got to get a visa. We've got to be allowed into a country. But just getting a visa is really not adequate. Not only do I need to get to the country and be able to live there, I need to get to a situation where I can talk to somebody and they can listen to me. So getting to the country is great, and I can see patients and stuff like that. But until I get to a place where we can have a comfortable conversation, a behind closed doors sort of conversation where they're comfortable to listen to the claims of the gospel, I haven't really been able to share the gospel with them. So I need the kind of the macro entry. I've got to have my visa, but I also need the micro entry. I need repeatable, relevant conversations with people in places where they are comfortable. So we've got to have entry. Now, the reason we get entry is for evangelism, right? And that's the reason that we have to get behind closed doors so they can process the claims of the gospel in a comfortable setting. We're trying to get to that lean forward conversation, right? If they're sitting back and yeah, and we're spitting seeds and sipping tea, they haven't really started to process what we're talking about. But when we get to that lean forward conversation, then now we're really starting to get some evangelism happening where they can really listen and think about it. Now, we do evangelism, and when they come to faith, the Great Commission does not say go out and evangelize all the peoples, right? It says go out and make disciples. Our task does not stop at evangelism. It begins, and then we need to get into a discipleship relationship. We need to be able to disciple them. Well, how does discipling happen? How does discipling happen here? That's actually a real question. I'm kind of expecting an answer. How does discipling happen here? Small groups. Okay, you have small groups that meet. Sometimes there's, there might be a Sunday school, or there might be a discipleship group. What do you know? Or community groups, or something like that. That happens, right? Discipleship. You just described it perfectly. Discipleship happens within the context of a church, right? So church, you look in the scripture and it's like, find church planting. Well, certainly Paul started churches everywhere he went, right? Why did he do that? Because the church is the mechanism that does the discipleship, okay? So we've got to have entry, we've got to have evangelism, we've got to get to discipleship. The whole point of that is to get to a church that can continue the discipleship, right? And they can pick up all of those other pieces. They can pick up the evangelism and continue the discipleship. That church has got to have leaders. It's got to have leaders. We need to develop leaders. We don't start churches and plan to be the leader of that church forever, right? That's not why we start a church. Incidentally, we don't start hospitals and plan to lead the hospital forever either, okay? So when somebody tells you that the IMB doesn't do healthcare anymore because we nationalized all the hospitals, I encourage you to remember, we don't start churches and plan to run them forever. We don't start hospitals and plan to run them forever. They go over to national leadership. Okay, so we've got to develop leaders to be able to take the church to the next level. And then we exit. Now, we call it exit to partnership, and we want to make sure that that's very clear. We don't exit relationship. We exit mechanisms and institutions and that sort of thing. Okay, so we still have relationship with the hospitals that we started. We still have relationship with the churches that we plant. We still have relationships with them, though we're not integral to the mechanism, to that entity. We're not running the hospital anymore. We're not the senior pastor of the house church that we started. Okay, so we continue on in relationship, in partnership with those churches. All right. So what's that look like in the real world? So we're going to fast forward here because we just finished our story. We were still in residency, I think. So let's fast forward. We've got a couple of kids. They're, like this big. And we lived in East Asia. And going out to eat in East Asia is wonderful because you can feed the whole family for like $10. Everybody's slurping noodles together. Everybody's happy. So we're on our way to go and get some noodles. And my phone rings. We've been in East Asia for, at this point, I don't know, 15 years, maybe. My phone rings. I pick up my phone, and we must have been there for a while because they didn't have cell phones when we first got there. So yeah, and I get on the phone call with this guy. He's one of our local partners, and he tells me what I think is that they've got a person at the local nursing home that's having a real problem with hemorrhoids. Okay, so I've been in the country for about 15 years, and my language was falling apart that day because it took a little while for me to realize he was saying bed sore, not hemorrhoid. But once I got that figured out, I thought, I'm a pediatric nephrologist. I don't really know how to take care of either one of those. So, but I happen to have a surgeon right here. She's a vascular surgeon, and bed sores are kind of her jam, right? I mean, wounds, they love that stuff. So I said, okay, you've got the wrong Dr. Hicks. You need to talk to her. So I handed my phone over, and she went at it.
We arranged to meet the next afternoon. They came and picked me up in their van, and it was not just the couple, but they had brought several friends. We get to the nursing home, and it was accurately described once we figured out the right word. It was probably about that big. The guy had not been able to move, and it was big and deep. So I check and I say, it's okay if I do something with this. And they said, oh yeah, the family would like you to help. So I start with like suture scissors and small pair of forceps and start to work. While I'm working on one end of the bed, our friend that called, I like to call her Tanya, she went up to the head of the bed and started to talk with this elderly man. I didn't catch all of it, but I got bits of what she was saying. Jesus loves you. Jesus cares about you. If you pray, Jesus will help you get through this, and he'll help with the pain. She continues on. I've done as much as I can do for a day and start to clean up. One of the friends said, don't get in a real big rush. The guy's about to pray to receive Jesus. So everything stops, and he does pray with her. And now we have two things to think about for that day, the next day, and several days after. You have a wound that needs care, changing. You have a new believer that needs some type of training and encouragement. So we loaded up again the next day and went out there. I worked on one end, and Tanya taught him a Bible verse, taught him a story, prayed with him, got him to pray, something very simple. God help me. Very simple, but still teaching him and encouraging him. After several days of this, we had more teaching and training to do. Tanya called a local church that was only about 15 minutes away instead of the other side of town. And so they started sending people to help out as well. They also would pray. They would sing. They would tell Bible stories. They started talking with all the people in the hallway. There is no HIPAA in this place. The staff, the other patients would come by and just stand there and watch to see what was going on. After about 2 weeks, I came in to help with the surgical part, and the lady said, I just talked with this guy over here, and he wants to believe. And I said, keep on. That day there were 3. A week later, there were 12. Then it started to get into the 20s, the 30s. You know, once it got to about 50, they didn't even tell me what was going on anymore. But that group would come, they would take care of our first patient, pray with him, teach him things, but then they would start teaching all the others in the nursing home that had believed.
So the church, now this nursing home is pretty big, actually. In East Asia, numbers are always huge, except when you're talking about nursing homes. Then they're really small. Like a nursing home of 12 people is a big nursing home. This one had 300 beds. So it's a really big nursing home for us. So the church came and they said, you know, we want to have a ministry to the whole nursing home. We want to be able to get to everybody. Could you help us? Could you give us some kind of mechanism so we could get to them? So we arranged to get them all trained in some very basic community health kinds of stuff. We taught them all how to take a blood pressure. We taught them all how to do a blood sugar. Taught them all some very basic range of motion sort of stuff. Is there anybody a PT here? Okay, good. We taught them basic PT. Let's pretend like it was that. We call it that. But really, it was just, you know, like range of motion after a stroke and how to get them from the bed to a chair and from the chair to a bed without, you know, needing PT yourself and that kind of stuff. So gave them those skills. And so along the way, they would go and they would visit in the rooms as they were sharing the gospel, and they would practice those skills. They would help these people, give them very physically obvious, clear help for what they needed. The head of the nursing home, very strong Buddhist, said, you know, I noticed that all you Christians are, you know, kind of getting more and more in number. Why don't you take this room over here and you guys can meet there? You can. It's a little meeting room in the nursing home. We don't use it all the time, so you can use it. When do you want to meet? And I said, okay, Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday. They were Baptists, right? So they started meeting every week, several times a week, for worship and teaching, and then the outreach that they were doing within the nursing home. Um, and the church that had started this ministry, they kind of appointed some people to be over it, to lead all of the work that was going on in the nursing home, and to continue that work. And we really, to be honest, we kind of lost track of the growth of that. Like she said, when they got to 50, we kind of stopped counting. And you know, they'd gotten there. They were meeting regularly together for worship and for discipleship. And so we went on, and our primary focus was a different people group. So we went on and continued that focus, but continued to connect with that church, and that the church that had started this work continued to connect with them, continued to encourage them, and continued to cringe every time they would put out notifications for prayer. Why don't you tell them about?
So part of why we lost track was the leader of the group had no fear, no sense of security, and he would text me, realize I was not the only one looking at this as it came through the airways, and he'd say, "We're having a Bible study. Don't you want to come? And we're going to have this big thing on Easter. Don't you want to come to that?" And sometimes I would just kind of close it, maybe delete it. He'd call me up, and it was just as open. So, yeah, it was easier to keep those interactions limited.
Yeah, you got to understand, we're living in a country where where all electronic communications are assumed to be monitored, and even communications in our house. We got so used to having a bug in our house. When we moved back to the States, I bought a Google Hub so I could have somebody listening to everything I said. Because you feel like I gotta have somebody. So he's texting. He's using unsecured texting apps, and when he would text it, he'd text their prayer group at the church, and he'd say the American doctors are going to such and such a town to do clinic and share the gospel. It's like, yeah, we should probably stop telling them what we're doing. But that partnership continued for quite some time, and we got kicked out for different reasons. So fortunately, it wasn't his fault. Now a few minutes ago, I walked through the 6 components of the core missionary task. Can anybody give me those 6 components? Okay, wait. Who said that? Okay, all right. Let's see how many you can get. Entry. Evangelism, discipleship, healthy church formation, leadership development. Well, I'm listening to you. One more. Exit to partnership. All right, yeah. So she fed you all the answers, but you had the courage to give them, so you get the prize. As we told that story, how did we accomplish entry? See, there's probably somebody on the stream going, I know. So, how did we accomplish entry? Somebody said?
Someone needed help with the bed sore.
Yeah, somebody needed help with the bed sore. A partner called us, said, come, help us. Right? I heard somebody say work visa. So we had a visa. That was accomplished. We'd been living there for quite some time. Obviously, I couldn't tell the difference between bed sore and hemorrhoid in the local language. But other than that, we were doing pretty well at our adjustment in language and culture. Children don't get either. Well, they just don't. It doesn't happen to pediatric nephrology patients to have hemorrhoids. So I just didn't know the word. So we had our visa and language, but then because of the healthcare service we could provide, a partner thought of us and brought us alongside to deliver a service. Okay, so how was evangelism accomplished? Yeah. Tanya did the evangelism, our local partner. my language there is pretty good, but it's not going to be as good as her. She had a Southern accent, but other than that, it's not as good as her. And so she gets a chance to then share with this guy. She's already tuned, she's already trained, she knows exactly how to do it. And fortunately, bed sores always seem to be down here, and the ears are almost always up here. And so it works out as a really good team up, right? Okay, so so Tanya shares the gospel with our local partner, shares the gospel. Okay, how was discipleship accomplished? Repeat visits. Isn't it great? You know, bed sores, you got to go back and you got to change the dressing. And there's an awful lot of what we do that requires repeat visits, right? In healthcare, we do a lot of that stuff. She gives me a hard time. She says, you see a patient, you have to take care of them for 20 years. She sees a patient, takes out their appendix, they're done. But I get, she's got to do follow up on the wound, and I at least get to dialyze them 3 times a week, so I get a chance at them a lot. But those repeat visits give us an opportunity to do discipleship. Okay, how was Healthy Church for me? Did we get to church? I don't know if you're from India or what's that. You know, I see that head bob. So, yeah.
Well, there was an opportunity for fellowship.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, so there were several elements of church, right? I mean, they were worshiping together, they were serving together, they were praying together, they were doing discipleship together. There were several elements of church. And as a physician, I'm going to stop there as to try to define church. I'm going to leave that to the big brains that know that stuff. But we certainly were seeing a formation. We were moving towards formation, right? Okay, what about leadership development? Were there any leaders developed? Yeah, and they did. You're exactly right. They did create new leaders because these are people that hadn't had a chance to be in leadership and ministry before. They started off with people that already were, right? Because that's oftentimes how it works. But then they quickly hand it over to people that they can help to develop. The local church is able to develop them as they are developing as leaders. So we have some leadership development. What about exit?
Well, the medical care was kind of finished, so you could move along with it. Then that sort of church had connected and formed consistent meetings.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were able to exit to partnership by continuing in our partnership with the locals, with that local church, and trying to stay off social media, the local social media, but continue to connect with them and encourage them, and really be encouraged by them. That's a two-way street, to the extent that they even invited you to go to another city and plant a church with them. For some reason, they thought that they needed. We're way on the interior, and they said, "Oh, we need to go to the coast and plant a church on the coast." And I don't know if they ever did. We said that's not where our call was, so we continue to partner with them through social media and stuff. But all right. Let me tell you a little bit about what it is that the IMB does in healthcare and health strategies. So this actually is from today. Looking over the last year, what kinds of health strategies are we employing around the world right now, and how much of them? So I want to point out what color is that? That says medical dental. What? Magenta. Okay, thank you. That magenta, I have it on good authority that that's magenta. That's only 22.6%. When you say health strategies to people, most people think about clinical medicine. They think about clinics, they think about dental offices, they think about surgeries. But when we look at around the world where we're having traction in health strategies, we see that clinical medicine is about a little over a fifth of all of our health strategies that are getting traction are straight up clinical medicine. Now, the health and hygiene, that includes all the community health work that we do, all of the dental hygiene teaching that we do, all of the school health programs that we're doing, that we're involved in, prison ministry, preventive care sorts of programs. All of that stuff would be under the health and hygiene. We see a good bit of traction there, great opportunities to work in large groups, to teach large groups, and then to share the gospel with large groups all at once, and then use that sharing of the gospel as a filter for those that the Lord is calling to himself. And then you'll see that those other two, is that purple and blue? This one and this one. They both look blue to me, just different hues, but you'll see that those are, but one of them just says trauma healing, the other one says mental health. So we're finding great traction in trauma healing. As you can imagine, with 108 million refugees in the world right now, and I'm using the term loosely because I'm including people that are internally displaced as well as people that have had to cross the national border. 108 million refugees in the world right now. There is a lot of trauma out there. What we found in East Asia, you don't have to be a refugee to have suffered a lot of trauma. There's a lot of opportunity for us to minister to needs for people that have had to process horrible, horrible things happening to them. And then under mental health, that would be just like our counselors, people that are doing counseling, set up to do other kinds of mental health projects, mental health ministries around the world. So it's important that you get that certainly clinical medicine is a chunk of what happens in healthcare missions. But this isn't the 50s. In the 50s, that would have been pretty much all we did. But things have changed, and we're hitting the whole spectrum of health in terms of preventing disease, mental health, as well as physical health and spiritual health. What kinds of people do we send? Now, I made the type really, really small so you can't see it, but this really big one here is nurses. We are overrun with nurses. About 12% of our personnel around the world are healthcare providers, and you can see the vast majority of them are nurses. We also, of course, we have plenty of physicians. We have PTs, OT, speech. We have a really lonely dentist, guys. Like a really lonely dentist. So, when the Lord calls you to go, he would love to have somebody to work with him. But we have people in every aspect that are doing in health, that are in healthcare. Now, I got interested, there's 12% of our personnel around the world are healthcare providers. I got interested in where they are. And so this is just a graph of the percentage of healthcare providers per total number of people we have in a given affinity. Now, affinities are ethno-linguistic groupings, typically geographic as well, but some ethno-linguistic groupings don't stop at the border. People have a tendency to move, and so these people would be working all around. And I thought it was really interesting. It's probably no shock to you. This is the brand new data. It's probably no shock to you that in the Middle East, we have a large percentage of our workers are healthcare providers. Why do you suppose that is? Access, yeah, you're going in places that don't want preachers, right? So when you show up as a healthcare provider, we can get across that border. We can solve that. It's very easy for people to understand what we're doing. We're healthcare providers, right? The second largest group. Now let's ignore this big tall one for a second. The second largest group is Sub-Saharan Africa. Why is it that Sub-Saharan Africa has such a high percentage of healthcare providers? Need. There's no, I know some of you have been to Africa. I was about to ask, how many of you have been to Africa? You go to Africa, there's huge parts of Africa that have no healthcare, no structure, no system. And so we have an opportunity to go into those places and provide real service and provide quality service and share the gospel with those people along the side with that. So Sub-Saharan Africa is another a high percentage of healthcare providers. But the punchline is we've got them everywhere in every one of our affinities except the deaf affinity. The deaf make up their own affinity, and we don't have any healthcare providers in the deaf affinity. So let me tell you, if you're interested, if the Lord's calling you, we really could use some healthcare providers in the deaf affinity. Why? The deaf are marginalized everywhere because nobody knows how to communicate with them. Oftentimes their family doesn't even know how to communicate with them. They go to the healthcare system can't handle them. They have very little health knowledge and information because it's so limited. Nobody can communicate with them. And so you say, well, I can't go to the deaf, I can't speak sign language. Well, guess what? They don't speak American Sign Language anyway. They speak Thai Sign Language or Laotian Sign Language or something else. We went to the field not being able to speak the language we needed to be able to speak. So you'll have to learn it. That's just the way it goes. But you can learn it. That's step one. So if the Lord is moving in your heart for health strategies and the deaf, don't say, there's no way to do that. Just because there's nobody doing it yet doesn't mean that it can't be done. We're ready for you to come and do it with us. This one is interesting. This is people that have been pulled in to function globally. So they're not in one affinity. They're looking at the whole world. I look at it and say, 22% of those people are healthcare providers. We must have something to bring to the global task as healthcare providers, and so they keep getting pulled out. All right, let's talk a little bit about pathways of service. And you said that I was supposed to, my flight is at 6, so I've got until then, right? 6 a.m.? Yeah, okay, good. I figure they're healthcare providers, so everybody's used to staying up all night. So let's talk a little bit about pathways to service. Certainly we send people for short-term trips. We send people for short-term teams where they would just go and you do the standard thing. You go for a week, you go for 2 weeks, you do clinics, or you teach in a medical school, or you teach medical English to a bunch of medical students or residents. 70% of the world's medical literature is in English, so everybody needs to learn to read, at least read medical English if they're going to stay on top of things. And so that's a great opportunity for us, even if you don't have the opportunity to learn the language deeply, you can still be very relevant, provide a very relevant service to a group of people that our cross-cultural workers can't get to because they're not healthcare, right? Because let's face it, as physicians, we're kind of snobs, and so we like to relate to other physicians. So when we come in as a provider to do that teaching, we have an opportunity that others don't have. So volunteers and for doing all the different kinds of volunteer things. We have something called the Global Health Rotation. This is when, if you're for medical students and residents, you do rotations through all the different departments, and if you're a member of a Southern Baptist church, which, by the way, is this a Southern Baptist church? Okay, it's a secret. We're streaming. I'm sorry. So if you're a member here, that counts. For Global Health Rotation, the IMB helps with your travel and your logistics and stuff like that. We can help financially with that stuff. And what we do is we hook you up with a healthcare provider on the field, and you kind of become part of their ministry for the 1 month or the 2 months or whatever. We have to deal with your residency or your medical school to make sure that you're meeting all of their academic requirements. So that becomes an issue. But we're ready to work with you if your school or your institution allows it. And then hands-on. Hands-on is really more for undergrads. That's kind of a semester abroad sort of thing where you would go and you'd be there for several months. You'd be integrated into a church planning team. And they would use you in various ways in terms of extending what they're doing already. Oftentimes, because of your background, they would extend into the healthcare community or into a community that has healthcare needs. Midterm. So I should start with Journeyman because you've got Journeyman here. Journeyman's our 2-year program where people will go overseas for 2 years and connect with a healthcare team or with a church planning team. I would say that we are inundated with. Is anybody in nursing? Nobody in nursing? Really? Oh, okay. Then I don't need to talk about it. So typically in medicine, we kind of study all the way to the end, and you go through all your clinical stuff and your residency and all of that stuff. So journeyman is not really appropriate for us. So what we have is called the post-residency ISC. So post-residency ISC is another 2-year program where you're connected to a church planting team with someone that's doing healthcare and church planting. And it's kind of an opportunity to just see what it's like to be doing health strategy on a church planting team. And then we have ISC Masters. ISC Masters is basically for old people, so there's only a few of you that would actually, be interested in that. Let's go on. And then, of course, long-term. Long-term, most people think in terms of career missionary service when we talk about long-term, but because for healthcare providers, the opportunity to do long-term is much broader. We can go and get jobs. Like the Cleveland Clinic has a hospital in Abu Dhabi, I think. One of the Emirates has a Cleveland Clinic. One of the other Emirates has a Mayo Clinic because, they've got to show up together and compete. And so you can go get a job there and get an opportunity to minister to the people in the hospital, to the patients that come to the hospital, and get access that other cross-cultural workers don't have. And so that's called a team associate. Those are people that get a job, and then we connect them to a team to be strategic in doing the job, whatever the job is that the Lord called you to. And they would not be necessarily IMB employees. They would be just connected to a team and integrated into that strategy. But then, of course, the career missionaries, those are our IMB employees. And they're also integrated into a strategy, but oftentimes the visa is a little bit different. The way we do it is a little bit different. So, all right. I made it, and so opportunity for questions. And I was talking to a bunch of non-medical people this afternoon. I got to the end of my talk. I threw this slide up there, and I said, "Are there any questions?" They spent their whole time talking about this slide. So I am happy to talk to you about this slide if you'd like to talk about it. My guess is you're better at figuring out what that is than any of those preachers were. Any questions?
Yeah. About the percentage of different things. And I got the sense that those are based on what's effective for the IMB strategy. How well do you think that aligns with the actual needs of the countries that you're in?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's an interesting way to think about it. I would say that those are based on what's effective for that country. So there are places, for example, if we go to Europe, it's really hard as an outsider, as a foreigner, unless you're coming from Eastern Europe. It's really hard, as an American, to go to Europe and get a license to practice. But it's not that difficult to go and start doing counseling, or to do community health, or to work in schools and do school health. And so we have to kind of tune what we do to the way the country allows it. Other questions? In the urban areas?
Is it typically they're more often sent to a city as opposed to a rural environment?
That is the coolest question. I really appreciate your thinking about it that way. Actually, as it turns out, not really. Though I think there's an opportunity for us to change that, traditionally, they're going to rural areas. In fact, to the extent that a lot of our personnel, this is the sermon that I preach to our personnel all the time. A lot of our personnel have this idea that healthcare only really is beneficial in the rural areas. But you're absolutely right. You go to an urban area, there are people, even in Turkey, they'll tell me, "Oh, Turkey's national healthcare system's great. Everybody's got healthcare. It's wonderful." But they're overrun with refugees. They aren't in the healthcare system. So cities all over the world, one of our really productive strategies in Seoul, South Korea, was to undocumented people, undocumented immigrants living in Seoul, because they don't have access to that healthcare system. And so there's real opportunities to connect to those people in urban areas. But traditionally, if you're working in a mission hospital, it's probably in a rural area, or like the Chicken Coop Clinic in Bangalore, India, which is now a tertiary care institution. It used to be rural because it was literally a chicken coop, but then the city grew up and now it's urban. But yeah, so we do have both. In urban areas, I would be thinking if you were going to a place like that, I would be thinking about how can we access the medical and education system there, because then we can influence generations, and we're influencing influencers that are then going to go out and really start to move, it's a leverage thing. I can get a professor in there that can influence the entire region. And so. I probably need to shut down, but do we get to hang around and ask, and people can come and ask questions? Okay, so my final question for you is, what is that? Okay, good. What's wrong with it? Ooh, I clued you in that it's not normal. Sorry about that. It's not normal. What's wrong with it? Oh, no. It's not cancer. It is cut to pieces, and they're not supposed to be like that, right? You're not supposed to slice them. But it's really hard to look at them until you slice them. Anybody else want to guess what is wrong with it? There's way too many white cells. This is post-infectious glomerulonephritis. But I think she wins. I think she wins. So, now, a corollary is, which kidney is it? You know which kidney it is? Yeah. How do you know? Because it's not the right, exactly. So yeah, for those of you that were here last year, I told you I am an expert in every single disease. I'm a generalist, every single disease that affects the left lower pole of the pediatric kidney. So you know that if I'm showing you a glomerulus, it came from the left side, because that's the only one that I know how to get to. The other one, it's underneath. Yeah, it's hard. So, all right. So yeah, so we're still around for questions after. Barrett's coming up, and I think he wants to talk to you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Janet. Can y'all give them a hand? Thank you so much. Grateful. I think the other workshop has just finished. It's good timing because we've got one door that's inoperable. The ice has gotten under the concrete and swollen up. We can't open the front door. So they've got to come out this way too. But please feel free to stay around with campuses closed again tomorrow and everything. What else do you have to do? So feel free to hang out with us. Feel free to interact with Tom and Janet. I really love and appreciate all of you who are in health sciences for being here tonight. I really do believe that there is a next step that is possible for each of you to get more engaged with the skills that you have and the need of the world. And I would really encourage you to think about having a personal opportunity to speak with Tom or Janet or both, and check out some of the resources. There's some really cool resources over there that are very practical to help you understand what could be possible pathways for you personally to get involved. So thank you again for sharing. Friday night, if the weather holds up, we do have an opportunity to come back together for a night of worship and prayer. We're planning on it. Let's hope the storms tomorrow are not too bad. But Friday evening, 6:30 again, we should be back in this room. If you want dinner, today is the deadline for that. So they're ordering dinner tomorrow morning, I believe. So if you want to be here for dinner at 6, then just go online or go to the app, and you can reserve a dinner. And I think that was it. You have anything else?
I just have one more thing. On your table, there are announcements for MedAdvance. If you're interested in what the IMB does in health strategies, that's the place to be. Sharice, how was it when you came to Nashville? How was MedAdvance? I'm glad you said that. I hope that next year will be as good. The legend who arranged MedAdvance this year has retired. And so, yeah, I'm your downgrade. So hopefully it'll be as good. We'll be in Houston, and it's an opportunity, really. There will be probably 50, 60 of our field people will be there. So you'll get a chance to get an overview of the entire world and what we do in healthcare around the world. So we'd love to see you there.
All right. Well, y'all are dismissed. Stay warm. Be safe. Engage with Tom and Janet. Have a great night. Thanks again.